Good afternoon. I am Ermi Bacanto from EM24.
This is our presentation. I will discuss about Chapter 4, the Globalization of Economic Relations.
The first is economic globalization. It's a historical process, the result of human innovation and technological progress. The explanation of economic globalization is tumutukoy po ito sa pagpapalitan ng product o service sa pagitan ng iba't ibang bansa sa daigdig at nagbibigay daan ito upang magkaroon ng interconnection ang iba't ibang market. Sa pagbusbong ng taon, mas maraming imbensyon ang nagagawa. Gaya na lamang sa mga makabagong teknolohiya ay mas napapabilis ang kalakalan o ang pagpapalitan ng mga product o service sa ibang bansa. At ito rin ay makakatulong sa mga kumpanya upang magkaroon ng maraming product na kanilang kinakailangan. Dahil din sa economic globalization ay nagkakaroon ng oportunidad para makapagtrabaho ang mga Pilipino sa ibang bansa. Interconnected dimensions of economic globalization. The globalization of trade of goods and services. The spread of trade, transportation, and communication system around the world in the interest of promoting worldwide commerce. When a country exports more than it imports, it's run a trade surplus. When a country imports more than it exports, it's run a trade deficit. So, ang explanation po dito is, ito po yung malayang pakikipagkalakalan na kung saan ang dalawang bansa o higit pa ay may kasunduan hinggil sa pagpasok at paglabas ng produktong inaangkat o tinatawag na imports. Ang ibig sabihin ng import ay ang pagtanggap ng mga produktong galing sa ibang bansa. At ang export naman, ito ay ang pagluluwas ng mga produkto galing sa sariling bansa. Maraming mga produkto ang ini-import sa Pilipinas at talagang nakakatulong ito para magkaroon tayo ng mga bagong kagamitan o pagkain na mapagkukuhaan. Like, yung halimbawa nito is yung Nike shoes na galing sa ibang bansa. Na alam naman natin na naging sikat ito sa Pinas, hindi lang ginagamit sa pang-sports kundi pang-forma na din ng karamihan. At isa rin sa halimbawa ay yung berries, kung saan ini-import ito sa ibang bansa at para gawin dito juice or cranberry. At ito naman ang halimbawa ng pag-export, like yung pag-export ng bansa natin ng oil sa iba pang bansa. Dahil alam naman natin na ang bansa natin ay pinakamayaman sa oil. Gaya lang din ng pag-export ng cocoa seeds ng ibang bansa mula sa atin. Bumibili ang ibang bansa ng cocoa seeds mula sa ating bansa upang gawing chocolate. The globalization of financial and capital markets. A country enjoys an absolute advantage over another country in the production of a good if it uses a fewer resources to produce that good than the other country does. So, ang explanation is naging dahilan ang globalization sa pagkakaroon ng palitan ng mga product or sa iba't ibang bansa na kung saan ang mga product or service ay naging puhunan upang magpatuloy ang kalakalan. So, ang example na lang is kapag si Counter A limited ang resources sa pag-produce ng coffee, samantalang si Counter B is mas productive sa pag-produce ng coffee. So, ang gagawin ni Counter A ay mag-import ito ng coffee kay Counter B. At pareho itong magkakaroon ng advantage ang dalawang country na to. Dahil palitan lang sila ng resources at the same time. Then, kumikita dahil sa benefits ng bawat isa. So, ang mga benefits ng pakikipagkalakalan ay nakakabili ng mga produktong hindi na produce sa loob ng bansa. Then, dumadami ang mga mapagpipilian ng mga produktong bilihin ng mga mamimili. Then, kumikita ang pamahalaan sa pamamagitan ng tariff or taripa. At last is tumataas ang kita ng mga producer na nag-export. The globalization of technology and communication. Capital is not the only phase factor of production required to produce output. Labor is equally important. To be productive, the workforce must be healthy. So, ang explanation is, mas napapadali ang globalization sa pagkakaroon ng mga makabagong teknolohiya, lalo na sa mga malayo at liblib na lugar. Sa tulong ng teknolohiya, lumaganap ang mga may trabahong may kinalaman sa kaalaman o tinatawag na knowledge economy, na kung saan mas nagiging productive din ang mga tao sa workplace dahil sa ginagamitan ito ng technology. Kaya't mas mapapabilis at napapadali ang trabaho ng tao, kaya't malaking impact ito sa improvement ng bansa.
Ito yung mga example ng technology like using gadgets like cellphone, computer, laptop, etc. Dahil din sa mga makabagong teknolohiya ay nakakatulong sa pagpapabilis ng paggawa ng mga product at mas lalong hikayat ang mga mamimili na patuloy na bumili ng mga produkto na nagmula pa sa ibang bansa like using social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at website. Like pabro-broadcast sa pamamagitan ng telebisyon, mabilis na nakikilala ang isang produkto or service dahil sa paggamit ng advertisement sa mga estasyon ng media. The globalization of production refers to the sourcing of goods and services from locations around the global take advantage of national differences in the cost and quality of factors of production like land, labor, and capital. Production is the process which inputs are combined and transformed into output. Production technology relates inputs to outputs. Specific quantities of inputs are needed to produce any given service or good. Ang explanation is, ito yung mga proseso para makabuo ng mga produkto o tinatawag na input. This is the example of production. Diba noon, kamay lang ang ginagamit nila para makagawa ng produkto. Hindi tulad ngayon na napalitan na ng mga makinarya na ginagamit sa paggawa ng mga goods para mapabilis ang paglika ng mga produkto at para din mas mapabilis ang pakikipagkalakalan sa pagitan ng iba't ibang bansa.
Hi, my name is Christine Bamba from BSEM II-4. My topic is all about distinction of globalization from internalization. Globalization. Globalization, it refers to the process by which a company brings its business to the rest of the world. So meaning, ito ang mabilis na proseso ng pagdaloy o paggalaw ng mga tao, bagay, impormasyon at product sa iba't ibang direksyon ng daigdig. Sa madaling salita, is ito yung pagtutulungan ng iba't ibang bansa in a whole world. Dahil din sa globalization ay nagkakaroon ng pagkabuklod-buklod ang mga millions of people in a whole world. So example, yung McDo restaurants operates in a dozens of countries. They also franchise over 100 countries. Dahil na din sa dami ng franchise or business nila all over the world is na-recognize na yung business nila in a whole world. Dahil na rin sa kanilang brand or logo. Then may paparinig po ako sa inyo about globalization, which is tula, globalization. Sa aking pagtanto na ang globalization ay hindi lamang binubuo ng 13 letra o isang salita. Ngunit ito ay binubuo ng milyong-milyong taong nagkakaisa, nagtutulungan at nag-uunawaan. Mula sa damit na ating sinusunod, pagkain na ating kinakain, musika na ating pinapakinggan hanggang sa mundo na ating ginagalawan. Hindi natin may pagkakaila na ang globalization ay isang parte na ng ating buhay na kung saan siya simula hanggang dulo nito. So next is internalization. Internalization, it is the practice of designing products, services in internal operations to facilitate expansion into international markets. So meaning it can be interpreted as the efforts of a companies to do the business in one or more foreign countries. Kumbaga, ito yung country to country. Like yung pag-import or export. So, example, yung Philippines, nag-i-import or export into sa bansa ng China. Then, ganun din, yung bansang China to Philippines. O kaya naman, yung pag-expand pa ng isang business sa international markets. So, next is globalization versus internalization. Distinction of globalization from internalization. Internalization is to perform at the international standards which domestic labor, natural resources to compete for the international market. But globalization is to integrate the economies with integrity and unity at the globe, to use other nations' labor, capital, and other resources of all to reach the best result. So, example, as mentioned kanina, McDonald's operates over 30,000 restaurants in 100 countries. So, it is a worldwide expansion. So, meaning, ito yung example ng globalization. While by the designing, the corporation creates a menu adaptable to various local tastes and custom. So, this policy is an example of internalization. So, like the McDonald's restaurant in Israel, they serve kosher food and drink and close during the Sabbath and Jewish holidays. Also, the McDonald's in India, they open a meat-free restaurant kung saan yung bansang to is karamihan yung population does not eat beef or pork. So next is the World Trade Organization and GATT. So, GATT, what is GATT? GATT, it is a general agreement on tariffs and trade, signed on October 30, 1947 by 23 countries. It is a legal agreement between many countries minimizing barriers to international trade by eliminating or reducing quotas, tariffs, and subsidies while preserving significant regulations. So, meaning sa Tagalog ng GATT, it is a pangkalatang kasunduan sa taripa at palitan. Ito ay isang ahensya ng United Nations na nilikha ng isang legal na kasunduan between many countries, whose overall purpose was to promote international trade by reducing or eliminating trade barriers such as tariffs or taripa or quotas. Tariffs or taripa is ito yung buwis or tax imposed by a government sa mga inaangkat or iniluluwas na kalakal or goods. While yung quotas naman or quota in Tagalog, it is a government-imposed trade restriction that limits the number of goods that can be imported or exported during a particular time period. So, sa madaling salita, is ito yung bilang na dapat magawa, mayari, maibenta, or matanggap during a particular time period. And according sa paunang salita neto or ng GATT, its purpose is yung malaking pagbabawas or reduction of tariffs and other trade barriers and the elimination of preferences on a reciprocal and mutually advantageous basis. So, yung GATT nga daw ay nilagdaan ng 23 countries noong October 30, 1947 and naging effective noong January 1, 1948. So, GATT was based on three principles. First principles, it is equal, non-discriminatory trade treatment for all member nations. Second is the reduction of tariffs from multilateral negotiations. And lastly, the third one is the elimination of import quotas. So, next dito is yung GATT and WTO trade rounds. There are 8 rounds. First round is in Geneva, Switzerland. Start noong April 1947 tumagal ng 7 months na may 23 countries na kalahok or kasali. Then, the achievement of this round was signing of GATT of 45,000 tariff concessions, affecting $10 billion of trade. And the second round was on April 1949 in Annecy, France. Tumagal ng 5 months na may 34 countries took part in the round. And then the achievement of this round was countries exchanged some 5,000 tariffs concession. And the third round occurred in Torquay, England in September 1950. Duration was 8 months na may 34 countries, and the achievements of this round was countries exchanged some 8,700 tariff concessions, cutting the 1948 tariff levels by 25%. And the fourth round returned to Geneva, Switzerland in January 1956. Duration was 5 months na may 22 countries, and the achievement of this round was $2.5 billion in tariff reductions. And the fifth round occurred once more in Geneva, Switzerland in September 1960. Duration was 11 months na may 45 countries. Then the achievement of this round was tariff concession worth $4.9 billion of world trade. And the sixth round was of GATT multilateral trade negotiations start noong 1964 of May. Duration is 37 months with 48 countries. And tinawag din to ng Kennedy Round. It was named after U.S. President John Kennedy in recognition of his support for the reformulation of the United States trade agenda, which resulted in the Trade Expansion Act worth $40 billion of world trade. And the seventh round in Tokyo, Japan, September 1973. Duration was 74 months with 102 countries with achievements of tariff reductions worth more than $300 billion. And lastly, the eighth round, the Uruguay round, began in September 1986. Duration was 87 months, and 123 countries took part in the round. With the achievements of this round led to the creation of WTO or World Trade Organization and extended the range of trade negotiations, leading to major reductions in tariffs about 40%, and agriculture subsidized an agreement to allow full access for textiles and clothing from developing countries and extension of intellectual property rights. So next dito is the World Trade Organization or WTO. So what is WTO? World Trade Organization. The WTO officially commenced on January 1, 1995 under the Marrakesh Agreement, signed by 123 nations on April 15, 1994. It is an intergovernmental organization that is concerned with the regulation of international trade between nations. It is the largest international economic organization in the whole world. So, WTO or World Trade Organization or sa Tagalog is Organisasyon ng Pandaigdigang Kalakalan. Nabuo nga raw ito noong Enero 1, 1995 at kahalili ito ng GATT or General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Ito ay isang intergovernmental na organisasyon na nag-uutos sa international na kalakalan. Nabanggit nga din na ito ang pinakamalaking pandaigdigang organisasyon pang-ekonomiya sa buong mundo. So, na-create ito upang pamahalaan at magbigay kalayaan sa kalakalang international. So, dito po natatapos. Thank you.
The next topic is all about preferential trade agreements. Next po. Free trade areas. Free trade area or FTA form when two or more countries agree to abolish all internal barriers to trade among themselves. The European Economic Area is an example of a free trade area that includes the 27 nation European Union, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. Next po. Ay, wait lang po. The purpose of free trade area is an economic theory that involves the analysis and function of importing and exporting goods without restriction. Many nations engage in free trade to ensure their citizens have enough economic resources or consumer goods for meeting various needs or wants. Next po. Custom union represent the logical evolution of a free trade area to eliminating internal barriers to trade, members of a common external barriers. The members of custom union dismantle barriers to trade in goods and services among themselves. Custom union establish a common trade policy with respect to non-members. The difference of custom union to free trade area. Free trade area is a least restrictive and lossless form of economic interaction among country. While custom union, ano siya, yung in a free trade area, all barriers to trade among members country are removed. So, next po. Common market. The next step in the spectrum economic integration to the removal of internal barriers to trade and the establishment of common external barriers. The common markets allows for free movements of factors of production, including labor, capital, and information. Common market have conditions. First is tariff or quotas and all barriers regarding importing and exporting goods and services among members of the common market are eliminated. Common trade restrictions as tariff on countries outside the group are adopted by all members. Common market has a benefits. First is free movement of people, goods, services, and capital. In addition of removal of tariffs among member countries, the key benefits of a common market include a free common of people, goods, services, and capital. The second one is efficiency in production. Next po. North American Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA. The United States is home to more global industry leaders, a total of 162 companies according to Fortune magazine's Global 500 ranking. The North American Free Trade Agreement was an agreement signed by Canada, Mexico, and the United States that created a trilateral trade basic in North America.
Hi, I am Maria Concepcion Pilabi, and I am from BSEM II-4, and I am presenting what's all about developing countries and international trade. When the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development came to being in 1964, that was first major change in the state of affairs of developing nations into international trade, as they did not participate actively in multilateral trade negotiations. For a relatively long time, most of developing countries did not manage to integrate into the World War II trading system successfully because they followed an inward-looking import substitution industrialization strategy, which did not favor trade openness, Findlay and O. Group 2007. The aim of United Nations was to promote trade in and cooperation between the developed. The aim of UNCTAD was to promote trade and cooperation between the developing and the developed nation. The following objectives after 1964 were laid down as follows: preferential access to advanced countries' market, renegotiating debt, establishing international commodity agreement to establish primary product prices, providing transfer of technology and increasing substantially. Dito po yung United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It's all about the trade, investment, and development issues. At itinatag ito ng United Nations General Assembly noong 1964 at inuulat ito sa UN General Assembly at UN Nation Economic and Social Council, and the organization goals are to maximize the trade, investment, and development opportunities of developing countries. At ang pangunahing layunin ng United Nations Conference on Trade and Development ay upang bumuo ng mga patakaran na nauugnay sa lahat ng aspeto tulad ng trade, aid, transport, finance, and technology. Some key trade facts. Following are several important facts relating to international trade. A trade deficit occurs when imports exceed export. The United States has a trade deficit in goods. In 2012, U.S. imports of goods exceeded U.S. export of goods by $735 billion. A trade surplus occur when export exceed imports. The United States has a trade surplus in services such as air transportation services and financial services. In 2012, U.S. exports of service exceeded U.S. imports of service by $196 billion. Canada in the United Nations most important trading partner. Quantitatively, in 2012, about 20% of U.S. exported goods were sold to Canadians, who in turn provide 15% of exported U.S. goods. The United States has a sizable trade deficit with China. In 2012, it was $315 billion. In 2017, it was $375 billion. China has become major international trade with an estimate 2.05 trillion of export in 2012. Other Asian economies, Korea, Taiwan, including South and Singapore, are also active in international trade. Their combined export exceed those of France, United Kingdom, and Italy. International trade links world economies through after change in economic condition in one place on the globe and quickly affect other places. International trade and is often at the center of debates over economic policy both between the United Nations and internationally. Ito lamang po yung mga ilang bansa na nagsalita ng mga product. Yung mga at pinakita rin dito yung mga nagastos ng bansa at yung mga salitan. Yun po. The trade barriers and export subsidies. Hindi ko na po babasahin. Papaliwanag ko na lang po. Yung trade barriers is just as tax on food export or subsidies for farmers in the developing economics lead to overproduction and dumping on world market. Yung tariff po is yung mga tax or duties ng bansa na gagawa ng mga product at mga bansa na nag-import o nag-export salitan ng product, ganun po. Yung revenue tariff naman is siya yung in-impose niya lang yung kita o revenue ng gobyerno kaysa protektahan ang mga domestic industriya. Nandito po yung example ng revenue tariff. For example, tin, coffee, or bananas. In case of the United States, rates on revenue tariff tend to be the modest and designed to provide the federal government with revenue. Import quota is limit on the quantities or total values of specific items that are imported in some period. Yung word na po na quota is, the word quota is siya yung naglilimita sa bilang o halaga ng pera ng mga kalakal na maaaring na-import o may-export ng isang bansa sa isang particular na panahon.
This is Nicole May Opulencia from EM24. My topics is all about
the Globalization of society. McDonald's can be found almost everywhere. This day in the United States, it is more than a restaurant. It has become a symbol of American way of life. Not only do people around the world associate McDonald's with the United States, but for every home, one food found. The 98% of school children identify Ronald McDonald, making him as well known as a Santa Claus. Ang Globalization of society daw, ito daw yung nagpapalawig o nagpaparami ng mga branch o store sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Basic organizational principle. What do you all development have in a common? According to George Ritzel, 1993-2003, the Globalization of society involved four basic organizational principles: efficiency, calculability, uniformity, and predictability, and control towards automation. Efficiency Ray, the marketing genius behind the McDonald's, set out with one goal: to serve a hamburger, french fries, and milkshake to customer in 15 seconds or less. Ang efficiency daw, ito daw yung pagpili ng mga paraan upang mapibilis na maabot ang isang produkto na may pinakamaliit na halaga ng gastos o pagsisikap. Calculability, the first McDonald's operating manual declared of the weight of the regular hamburger to be 1.6 ounces, its size to be 3.875 inches across, and its fat content to be 19%, a slice of the cheese weight exactly half an ounce, and french fries are cut present 9/32 of inch thick. Ang calculability daw ay bumubuo ng paniniwala na ang dami ay katumbas ng kalidad at ang isang malaking halaga ng produkto na ihatid sa customer sa isang maikling dami ng oras ay kapareho ng isang dekalidad ng produkto. uniformity and predictability. An individual can walk into a McDonald's restaurant almost anywhere and buy the same sandwich, drink, and dessert prepared in the same way. Uniformity results from a rational system that perceive every action and leave nothing to change. Yung predictability daw, ito daw yung kahit saan man magpunta ang isang tao, makakatanggap sila ng parehong serbisyo at tatanggap ng parehong produkto. Control automation, the most universal element in the market system in the human being. People, after all, have a good and bad day. Something let their mind wait or decide to try something a different way. Yung control daw, ito daw yung pamantayan at uniforming empleyadong kapalit ng pantao ng mga teknolohiya, hindi pangtao.
Ayun lang po, maraming salamat.
Dito na po nagtatapos ang aming report. We are Group 8, Leader Erami Bacanto, Members Christine Bamba, Nizel Joy Barrios, Maria Concepcion Lagi, Nicole May Opolencia. That's all. Thank you.